Hello, and thank you for choosing Translation Exchange as your localization partner. In this video, we will show you how to integrate Ruby on Rails application with Translation Exchange SDK. So let's go through a few short steps to get application ready for localization. First, you need to create an account with Translation Exchange. So let's quickly get through Ruby on Rails. Let's say we test Rails integration. We'll add Russian, German, and Spanish. If you happen to have your URL of application available, please enter it. For now, I can enter because I'm gonna set it up localhost. Let's create a new project. We'll skip verification for now. And then if you happen to have your files from previous localization platform or you had some translations done, you can always drop them in and have some translation available for you at the beginning. So I'll go to dashboard. As you can see, there's absolutely no strings available, no sources. So under integration, we can find our key that we will utilize to complete our integration. So second, we need to initialize the file in our Rails application. So let's navigate to our Rails application. That's our simple, foodie, tasty application that we created for our demo purposes. Let's first actually enable TML library in our gem file. So the only thing that you need in your gem file is add GML TML Rails. That's pretty much it. That's the only requirement that we have. Once you do that, you have to have initialization file, and under your configuration is initializers. We have I created TML.RB file, and that's where we're gonna put our key. So the only thing that you really need is those three lines: is the host, which is the API, the translationexchange.com, and a key of the application. I have cache as well configured, and right now I am using Memcache as adapter. We are supporting many cache adapters, and there's more information on our documentation. I have some logging as well enabled as simple logging that Rails environment. So let's first change our key. So I'll go back to here, I'll copy it, I'll change it. That's one step. So after that third, we'll have to do the fun part. This is where we get to wrap our text. This is where you have to make sure all your tags that you want to have localized is wrapped. And in a standard Rails environment, you have ITN library, which is what this is. And we created our own way of wrapping our text, and I'll show you more about it. In the ITN library, everyone's using T method, and we created a TR method. This was done because our TML language, our library, is much more powerful in terms of taking care of pluralization, taking care of gender cases. We have a full support for language rules. But for now, for the purpose of the demo, we'll just show you a simple, quick way of just to get all the text out and localized. So let's go back to some of our views. So if you go to some of the, let's say, footer, here you can see TRH. TRH is one of the methods that you can use to select the whole block of code, and that block will be extracted. All the strings will be identified and extracted automatically. So you can in reality have it the whole page, TRH in the beginning, and then end to the function at the bottom. Here we actually can see a simple TR method. The TR method is our simplest method where you can wrap a simple string around it and have that string extracted automatically. But here we have something else. We have a token, a company. A company, then later we pass that token back into it. Sometimes you want to have here a company which is Translation Exchange. Not always company can change, or some other tokens can be passed from some backend application. That's why you can utilize the tokens, and our system will recognize it. We can see TRL. TRL is not a method that we have for something that is not possible to do translation in context. And I'll talk more about what context means, something that you not really visible to the users. Here again we can see TR method add recipe. So add recipe will be localized and extracted as a string. And here, this is something that we provide. This is a language selector. The only thing that you really have to change here is the type of language selector. We have a pop-up, we have side flags, we have just flags, we have default. Here I'll just select the pop-up. Let's look at our view files. Let's say list. Here you can see a few more wrapping of the text. TR recipe name. As you can see, recipe name comes from the either here it's the database or other backend application, same as recipe description. So all the description that we passed in will get extracted. Here, let's say we have more. So TR update recipe, TR red recipe. Those are the strings, and they will be extracted and ready for localization. Here we have some of the, yep, there it is, TR category name. So that name will be localized. Under show, we have a lot. So here's TR preparation. Preparation is just a simple string. It gets extracted. Here it's recipe preparation. That is pulled out of the array. Same thing, description. And we can go through, there's a simple string integration list. And you can see more. Here's actually more interesting. Here's we go through actually measurements for the recipe. And we have a lot of numbers and count. And we can say that you can see here some bold num. Num is a token that we pass through, and the number is passed through the application. And bold is a actual simple view of the number will be in a bold. So instead of actually wrapping it in a HTML string of strong, you can just say bold, and our application will know, okay, that's just an HTML tag. There's one more thing that really we need is to make sure that our SDK is running and rendered an application. So the only thing that we really need here is an application file. We create a HTML scripts tag that tells us to really go through all the scripts that we have for the HTML and work with them. One thing that I wanted to notify is that link here where we have a ITN backend. So sometimes you might ask, but I already internationalized my code with ITN Rails library. Why should I do with the TML library? So as I mentioned before, TML library has many advantages over standard ITN Rails library in handling many language rules that ITN cannot. But if you already use ITN library, you don't want to go through and change it, or it's very simple, and why should you change all of the stuff that you already did? We work well with ITN backend, so you can use us at the backend, and we'll pick up all the ITN standard T wrapping, and it will get extracted. But for that, you'll need to use that initialization script. But it will not utilize any of the full advanced features of our TML library. So now we're ready to test how our application will appear and how we can start with the actual localization process. So let's run this application, and it's a simple, I'm going to do it on a port 5050, and it's going to start right now. Let's run localhost 5050, and that's our simple, tasty application. So you can see, I remember I used the standard TML language selector and placed it on my navigation bar, and here it is. We can see now only English, and I'll explain where all the languages that we selected. Let's now translate it to German and Russian, and maybe Spanish as well. So first, in order to do that, we need to get into translation mode. TML Rails SDK does not communicate to Translation Exchange all the time. Only when you are in translation mode and it's enabled, and then translations are not available until the developer or project manager decides that it's ready and releases the translations. So in order to get into translation mode, there are two ways. One is you can just click here, which pretty descriptive, activate translation mode, or you can do it with the keyboard shortcut, which is Control-Shift-I for the inline mode, as we sometimes call the translation mode. So let's click on this. You can see that the site refreshed, but nothing really happens here. But if you look at the language selector, now we see Spanish, German, and Russian, exactly what languages we created in dashboard. And the main thing, what happened now, TML SDK now is initialized and connected to our translation center and pulls all the strings that we wrapped up into our dashboard. If you go back to our translation center, suddenly you see strings appear. If you look at the strings, you see all the strings that were wrapped up. And if you click on more, there's more stuff into it. And you can see here, let's say if I go to, let's say, Spanish, some, as you can see, already translated. And some are in red and some are in green. That's our inline mode. You can do translations right there in context of the application. That's pretty much it. That concludes integration process in HTML Rails in Ruby on Rails application. Thank you for watching.